Richard Allen being sentenced to 130 years is absolutely ridiculous. At the very least, this man deserved a fair trial. If what we want is justice, we have to do this the right way. But now it's time for the appeal. So what's that process going to look like? And what grounds do they actually have to legitimately appeal what appeared to be a sham trial? While everything is alleged, welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Look like Russell Wilson.
Judge Fran Gull today sentenced Allen in Carroll County after his conviction on all counts last month. The two girls were killed in February of 2017. Allen received 65 years for each murder. He was arrested a little more than 2 years ago, 5 years after the teens' murder. The crime left their families heartbroken and rocked the small.
And on this channel, I don't think we've talked about them enough. It's very important to know that Libby and Abby are very much victims. What happened to them wasn't deserved. It shouldn't have happened. And whoever did it is an absolute monster. Now the state claims this was Richard Allen. Richard Allen was the person who committed these crimes. But based off what I heard from the reports I got from the trial where there was no cameras, it doesn't seem like the state had much evidence at all. And then you factor in the behind the scenes stuff that was going on. The optics just didn't sit right with me. Now if they sat right with you, that's fine. This is an open discussion channel and you can feel free to disagree at any point.
Small Delphi community.
This community has embraced our families from day one and continues to lift us up.
I hate what he had to
and
go
support
through.
us. And again, for that, I'll always be grateful.
I keep hearing the word closure. People are coming up to me saying, I bet that
Oh,
you're glad that
Lollipop
there's
Gil.
finally closure. There will never be any closure in this case. The Germans in the Williams family lost their daughters, their granddaughters, their siblings. Justice, a form of justice was served, but it does not bring Abby or Libby back.
What exactly does he mean, a form of justice? Justice is either served or it isn't. There aren't forms here. Is that some sort of Freudian slip where he's saying, look, maybe he's the dude, we believe he's the dude, we probably know that we couldn't prove it all the way, and we're thankful for Judge Gull. I mean, all this is alleged once again. But what is a form of justice? Now, if I'm just misunderstanding what his overall point is, that's fine. But to me, there is either justice or there's injustice. There is no other form of justice available in our judicial system. You either got it right or you got it wrong.
In handing down the sentence, Judge Gull said in her 27 years as a criminal court judge, this ranked as one of the most heinous
It really
crimes.
was.
WRTV's Caitlin Kendall was in the courtroom every day for the trial and for today's sentencing. She joins us now with the
Seriously,
story
that
of a
dude looks
woman
like Russell
who was
Wilson.
singled out at the post-sentencing news conference for pointing investigators in Allen's direction. Caitlin, tell us a little bit about this.
I will get to Kathy Schenk in just a moment, Mark. A lot actually happened in courts today, including 6 victim impact statements made from both the family of Abby Williams and Libby German. The defense took a moment to say some words, as did the prosecution. But as you just mentioned, after the sentence was read, many investigators took time in that news conference. Even the prosecutor took time in the news conference to praise one woman named Kathy Schenk, who they say found a misfiled report that cracked this entire case wide open.
September 21st, 2022, it was my...
For all of y'all who have asked in the comments section on my previous videos of this particular story, this gentleman right here is Holman. This is the guy that used the read technique. And if you want more information about the read technique, please go to Andrea Burkhart's YouTube channel. She covers it extensively. But it essentially elicits false confessions. So this is your guy. This dude right here that looks like the full-grown version of Buzz from Home Alone.
deceased husband's birthday.
A date that already held significance for Delphi resident Kathy Schenk. A day that changed everything for the Delphi double murders trial.
I'll not forget that day.
It's a day Schenk discovered a misfiled tip in the command center for the investigation.
I basically call it divine intervention.
Right place, right time. Schenk says they were moving
How
offices
convenient.
when she opened a drawer and found a box with a report filed by an investigator of an interview where Richard Allen spoke with police about being on the Monon High Bridge February 13th of 2017, the day Abby and Libby went missing.
When I found that, I realized that I had not heard of this person, and I went to the file drawer and found the actual file for...
So you're saying you have absolutely every single interview memorized, you had every single file memorized. I'm not going to jump too hard on this woman. Number one, because I respect my elders. But it is odd. The whole situation sounds odd to me. Is it divine intervention or is it a well-crafted play? That's what's up for debate right now.
Richard Allen Whiteman at that time, as it had been written.
A mistake on the filed report. The street name.
Keep in mind they said Richard Allen said he was on the bridge that day. He had never told law enforcement he was on the bridge at the time of this attack. But once again, that story gets kind of muddled. Everybody says, well, he says he was on the bridge that day. Well, of course, there were a lot of people on the bridge that day. That doesn't necessarily make somebody the suspect of a criminal case. At least that's just how I'm seeing it.
Name Allen lived on added to his last name on the case file, which made just enough room for Allen to slip through the cracks for 5 years.
And basically, I put the two and two together, took it to Tony, and we went from there.
It was her discovery that the investigative team credits for solving this case.
It's very humbling, very humbling. I did it because I like to serve. I like to help people, and that's what I did.
It was her work that gave police the tip they needed to arrest Allen. The timeline, investigators say, places Allen at the scene of the crime.
Ron Logan.
And they just went into action and did what needed to be done, and here we are today.
As for her feelings on the verdict and the sentence,
The justice has been served.
Allegedly.
Now, Richard Allen's family was not inside of the courtroom during the sentencing today. I was told by members of the defense team it's because Richard Allen requested that they did not show up today. The defense team also declined to comment about the verdict.
And why would they comment? Everybody knows the fix was already in.
Of course, today's sentencing. Mark?
Well, Caitlin, we understand Allen's family was not in the courtroom, but the families of Abby Williams and Libby German were in the courtroom today, and they were allowed to speak before the sentencing was handed down. What did they say?
Yeah, the judge allowed any family members who wanted an opportunity to speak to read their victim impact statements. 6 family members, including the grandparents of both Abby and Libby, and a cousin of Libby and Libby's mom also spoke. And they were very emotional. It's a moment in court I'll never forget. They were emotional talking about the time that was taken away, the memories that were taken away as to what the future could have held for both.
Let's just all admit, in terms of victims' families, these families handled this with grace. They handled it with dignity. They didn't publicly lash out at anybody regardless of what they said. If there was ever a template on how to behave when something tragic happens to somebody within your family, these individuals wrote it. Now, do I agree with them that Richard Allen committed this crime? No, I don't. But I think we can all respect and appreciate the way they conducted themselves throughout this entire investigation and this trial. At least that's just how I'm seeing it.
Abby and Libby, and the future that was robbed of these girls. And so they just wanted everyone, including the judge, to take into consideration before delivering that sentence, to take account into the lives that were lost and what was taken from them. And all of those family members actually took a moment to look Richard Allen in the eyes, and they kind of got poignant with him and got direct with him, saying that they've been in a living hell and they want Richard Allen to live in one now for the rest of his life. So it was emotional, it was hard, and at times it was harsh, but they wanted Richard Allen to hear their message loud and clear. Mark?
Such a long road to get to this point. Our Caitlin Kendall live for us in Carroll County tonight. Caitlin, thank you. Well, now that Richard Allen has been sentenced, his lawyers say they will be appealing this. WRTV's Meredith Hackler joining us now
absolutely,
with that
they're
process
going to appeal this.
and how it works. Meredith?
Yeah,
so here's
Mark,
the info.
Richard Allen's lawyer has 30 days starting today to file an appeal on Allen's behalf. Nothing has been filed yet, but experts say it could take some time for that filing to take place. So here is how it works. The defendant, Richard Allen, and his attorney would begin by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. Now, the clerk is located in the State House, but according to the Court of Appeals, the documentation will be filed electronically. The defense must also file their brief. Once that is done, it can take from 2 to 6 months to get on the Court of Appeals docket.
Does anybody actually think Richard Allen's going to be able to make it 2 to 6 months? Given everything that has come out about the prison guards and his treatment within the prison system, how safe is he? Especially considering he's got that jacket put on him now. He's going to be at the bottom of the totem pole as far as everybody else is concerned because of what he was found guilty of. I mean, certainly time is not on this man's side.
The Court of Appeals says, on average, it takes a little more than 2 months. Many times, the court decides appeals without oral arguments, but one IU law expert says it is likely there will be oral arguments in this case. She feels Allen's lawyers will appeal based on how the trial was handled and several other factors.
They'll contend that they should have been allowed basically to present their defense that others were involved and that this basically involved Richard and conducted by practitioners of odinism, and Richard Allen was not involved and their client was innocent.
And let's keep in mind, because the counter to that statement that a lot of people make is none of this was viable. The point is, his defense team had a right to use this particular theory as a defense. It shouldn't have been up to the judge, and it's certainly not up to us, to determine if this is valid or not. It should have been up to the jury. The jury should have been able to hear this particular story and say, is this viable? Does this make sense? Does this clear the person the state is charging with this crime? They never got to hear any of this. And there are a lot of jurors who will go into a courtroom and they'll think, okay, if this guy didn't do it, then who did? So what were they supposed to do when there hasn't been any other alternative theory thrown out there? Especially one as well crafted as this one. At least that's just how I'm seeing it.
Now, there are 15 Court of Appeals judges in Indiana. 3 will be randomly selected to oversee the appeal, assuming one is filed by Allen's attorneys. Mark?
And Meredith, throughout the trial, cameras were not allowed in the courtroom. So with this new process, will cameras be allowed if there are oral arguments in the Court of Appeals?
Mark, all Court of Appeals oral arguments are live streamed to the public, just like Supreme Court arguments in the state of Indiana. One thing to note, though, Richard Allen likely will not be at the Court of Appeals, which is located in the State House. He can request...
Well, at least this particular portion of the process will be live streamed, and we'll be able to get to see this. We won't have to base our information off of somebody else's interpretation of what they saw. And it is a true shame that Judge Gull didn't allow cameras in the courtroom. They could have live streamed it. They have that technology. There were ways that they could have had this particular trial televised while still protecting sensitive data. And the fact that they didn't is an absolute travesty. There is a very real possibility 99% of the questions we all had going into this particular trial could have been answered if there would have been cameras. But there weren't.
To be there, but a representative from the Court of Appeals tells me that that is rare.
Our Meredith Hackler with the answers tonight from our newsroom tonight. Meredith, thank you.
So there you have it, 30 days. They have valid grounds for an appeal, and we'll just have to see how this thing shakes out. I'm not going to let up on this story because I personally, and this is just me personally, feel like an injustice was done. We all have a right to a fair trial, regardless of how we feel about any particular individual or the alleged crime they were accused of. Nothing within this Delphi story has set right with me. Now, if it sits right with you, that's fine. This is a free country and this is an open discussion channel. But if you like this and more fair coverage on this story and others, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.